hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Bamuthi official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School. We break down the most controversial subjects, the most engaged debates, the most interesting subjects going on in the world today. And today is absolutely no different. We are talking about some serious issues this week. Started with Trump. It kind of starts and ends with Trump, but it started with Trump specifically around election stuff. We've talked about HBCUs and the decline of Black men in HBCUs, etc. But I don't want to ever ignore the cultural dimension of what's going on these days. And on Thursdays, sometimes Wednesdays, but often Thursdays, we like to do a little thing where we do deeper dives into topics. And I couldn't think about culture and the arts without talking about the relationship between what's happening in the Trump administration and what's happening on the ground with us. And I say us, I mean Black folk. And for future reference, like Toni Morrison, when I say people, I mean Black people. So just understand that. Also, thank you all for watching. Thank you for your patience. I was having a little bit of a travel issue, and then it became a tech issue. But I think we've worked it out, and I think it's looking smooth and sounding smooth. Anyway, so we're gonna get right to it. Let me give you some context here. The Kennedy Center just made, I would say, a bold move by firing its social impact team, including Marc Bamuthi Joseph. Now, with ties to Trump and questions over why the cuts were made, we have to ask, are we at a moment where everybody just broke? Or are we at a moment where there's a broader attack on Black art and culture? And who better to talk about this stuff than my dear sister, my dear friend, the legendary, the host, by the way, the host of Ascending here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, the Reverend Doctor. I like to call her Reverend Doctor. She's neither, but I like calling her that. April R. Silva. April, good to see you.
Good to see you, fam. How you doing?
I am hanging in there, feeling better, feeling healthy.
Good.
Not entirely rested, but better than normal.
We talked about that.
We did. I've been trying to listen. I've been trying to listen.
Not just me. Everybody who loves you is like, yo, rest is essential.
Rest is essential. I'm sorry. Is that a Howard University sweatshirt you're wearing?
You have to ask.
Oh my God. Is it like a... So as I asked you that, my wife just pumped her fist in the air.
Of course she did. Hey.
April said, hey. It's funny, y'all haven't met, but y'all both Geminis and Howard alum. Nah. And
she's a June Gemini. So
she is a June Gemini. June 6th. And when are you, April?
15. I'm dead back in the middle of the year, in the middle of the month. Perfect. Right. Perfect balance.
I gotta make sure y'all connect at some point. You gotta come by the house or something so we can y'all can talk about I don't want to say the real HU because that's Hampton, right?
What? Mark, don't start. Don't do that. Don't do that. Like, that is the one thing where I'm not rational. That whole conversation about the real HU is just so stupid to me. And I love HBCUs. Anybody that knows me for a nanosecond knows I'm all about HBCUs, not just Howard. But right. That conversation about the real HU and all of, what are they, the Pirates? Oh, are they the Pirates? I don't know.
I don't know what they are either. I'm not allowed to know. As far as I know.
Yo, I think that chatter started somewhere, I don't know, 80s, 90s or whatever, but
they take it seriously.
They take it seriously, the Hampton Institute people.
Once that institute word come out, I know y'all mean business.
I'm saying
my father, I witnessed it in the Philadelphia area. It happens because of Lincoln and Cheney. They have a very similar battle over which is the oldest HBCU.
Right. Right.
Cheney says it's them, Lincoln says it's them, and it's a technicality because about who gave out degrees first. But I think the answer is Cheney. I'm biased. My dad went to Cheney State,
I thought
but
it was Lincoln, but no, no disrespect.
yeah, it's all love. Ooh, did I
What?
see Malik say my daughter awaiting acceptance HU decision? Malik, I don't know about them other schools. I never heard of any of them. They don't
Pepperdine?
exist.
What? Oh,
Or Gonzaga. Eh,
I, yeah. I'm not here for that conversation.
I'm gonna give
But
you some.
go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I say. When my daughter was looking for colleges, um, I didn't say she had to go to an HBCU. My daughter is not at an HBCU. She's actually at a private Ivy. They're all private, I guess. But I wanted her to go to an HBCU. And what I said to her was, you don't have to go to an HBCU, but what I'm not going to allow you to do is go to a mediocre white school. And because there are people who will be like, I'm not going to Howard, I'm not going to Spelman, and then they'll pick a school. And I'm not talking about the schools, Malik, I'm not talking about the schools you just mentioned for your daughter. I'm speaking in general, because my daughter wasn't looking at Pepperdine or Gonzaga. But some of the schools she was looking at, I was like, that ain't better than Spelman. That ain't better than Howard. And even if they're close, you won't have the social connections, you won't have the networks, you won't have the experience. I mean, it's one thing if you say I'm going to Harvard, right? And again, I'm saying choose Howard over Harvard too, but at least I can wrap my mind around going to Harvard. But if you're like, oh, I'm going to Joe and Ernie's, what are we doing?
The thing about it is, I didn't even know that there was a such thing as HBCUs until 1986 when I was in 85 when I was in the 11th grade and we had to go to the college fairs. I had no idea. I'm a native New Yorker, but I spent my junior high and high school in Los Angeles. So I went to
Yeah.
this college fair, and begrudgingly, I was a good student, but it was too early to start thinking about colleges or universities. But I went because I was supposed to. I'm in the 11th grade, and that's where the Howard table was, and I was blown away,
What did it for
absolutely
you?
blown away.
What did it?
What did it?
Yeah.
The alum. No, before we even get to the Thurgood Marshalls and everybody and who I only a little bit heard of, the fact that there was a Black institution, period. Again, I had no idea that they even existed. So the fact that there was an institution of higher learning in DC run by Black people, founded in 1867, blew my mind. So that's what did it. And then
Mm.
the illustrious past and the legacy, I was like, oh, it's the only school I applied to. What I don't like is when people do that thing, that Howard does it themselves. Some people, there's a faction of Howard that does it themselves, that it's the Black Harvard, right? We
Oh, I hate that.
automatically, oh
When I
my
got to
God,
Morehouse, they tried to tell me that you are in the Harvard of the South. I was like, you don't shut your ass up.
man, please, I really, really, really hate that to this day. But that's a mindset, right? We know that's a certain kind of a
It is a
mindset.
mindset.
It's a cool version of us, like me and everybody, who my family was at Howard. We were the radical ones, and we shut that down. Like, we think like we are great because we are without comparison.
Right.
So yeah. But my
Right. Decentering the white institution, decentering white culture is so important, but it's so hard.
yeah,
Because we
it
thought it
is.
was high honor. At some point, it was high cotton to be the the Harvard of the South, and I remember being there like, why are we going to do that? One, it wasn't really true, but also like, I don't want to be that no way.
Right. Right. I didn't come to my idea of going to Howard wasn't to become like this white version of anybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or anything. As a matter of fact, you know our history. We all about was about making Howard a real Black institution, right? Like we always say, there are at least two Howards. There's the assimilants, those who assimilate, those who are radical, those who are trying to make it more black, authentically black, and not just a cover up, you know.
Right.
So yeah, yeah.
I think
But
about the
even
great.
still, with all of
No, go
that,
ahead.
it's still only one original HU. So I just need to say that very clear to my beloved Hampton Institute, Hampton University business. Anyway,
That's
you can
fair.
go on.
That's fair. I hope y'all Hampton people listening. You know, the words expressed by April Silver are a reflection not of the Mark Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, but only, or of Night School, but only of April Silver and Ascending. Um, but it's all love. It's all love. And look, I'd rather be at either of those places than Harvard, especially these days. What did the great Carter G. Woodson said? Harvard has ruined more Negroes than bad whiskey, and
Ooh, that's a good one.
he ain't wrong. he, he ain't wrong.
Agreed.
Shout out to Carter G. Woodson, the founder of Black History Month, author of Miseducation of the Negro, and so many other wonderful things. All right, let's talk about the thing that I actually brought you here for. Among other things, I just like talking to you, so it makes it easy.
I know. It's all love.
It's all love. So, what's going on? I mean, the Kennedy Center fires its social impact team. There's all this talk about Trump and cuts, and I just don't quite break it down for help me understand what is going on exactly.
Well, Trump is being Trump, as we know. He's being the evil, I say, dare say human being, but just this whole idea of creating chaos and just shutting everything down is what's happening at the Kennedy Center. We know it's happening with the Smithsonian Museum Network as well, because that was the news for today. What Kevin Young is now stepped down or is on leave at the National Museum for African American History and Culture. So we know that everything that Trump stands for is anti-us. And to your point, when we say us, we're talking about Black people. But it's beyond that. But at the core,
Yeah.
The thing, Mark, that as I contemplated it is a sad thing. It's not right. It's not fair. When good people are losing their jobs, that's not a good thing. I listened to most of the interview that Mark did on Democracy Now, actually, and great programming that is now going to be in existence because of the dismantling of this social impact team at the Kennedy Center. But the thing that it kind of ties into what we were talking about before. The thing that stands out for me um, that we have to really look at is that there was a need for a social impact team in the first place. What that is that at the Kennedy Center, the institutions like it, there was a lack of penetration or a lack of engagement with our community. So they had to bring in people to do what it should have been doing in the first place, right? In terms
Mhm.
of the kinds of programming and the marketing. So on one side, that's a good thing that somebody had them to wake up and see the importance of it. But I'm zoning in on the fact that these institutions, whether they're federally funded or not, these institutions that we hold in such high esteem, be it the Kennedy Center, the Smithsonian, all of these other museums that are now under attack because they rely so heavily on federal grants. But I really wanted to talk about what we say as artists and what's important and what we aspire to. So I'm not poo pooing those who have performed at the Kennedy Center or those who aspire to be in those corporate cultural art spaces. I like us to think about what it means, to your point, as you said earlier, to look at art and be about art and to create on the ground level and not need the Kennedy Center in the first
Right.
place and to
Right.
not need it. You know, Mark, we celebrate this month, April 1st was our kickoff for our 32nd anniversary at Aquila Work Songs, right? I cut my teeth in arts and activism work. I
Tell
I
everybody what a killer work songs is, because I think some people out
oh,
here who are new to you need to know that.
absolutely, you're absolutely right. Aquila Work Songs is my PR agency. Right? It's the name of the agency, Aquila Work Songs. We started in 1993. Um, PR, communications. I do communication strategies, and I've worked with individual artists, aspiring poets whose names you at the time you did not know, all the way to the Ford Foundation, to the Mott Foundation. Like that's a big spectrum from the individuals to the multi-billion-dollar philanthropics, right? So and we've been doing it for 32 years, based in New York, but our reach is way beyond. My point is that even with that work, even with the corporate entertainment side, even with the corporate cultural arts spaces or those large, massive nonprofit spaces, I'm still in the indie lane, right? I'm
Right.
still in the indie lane. I'm not impressed with the institutions that are birthed from this place. As our mother Sonia Sanchez says, this place called America. I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm not impressed with that. You know, I don't
Mm.
aspire to have this kind of mindset that says I'm a writer just because I have a New York Times bestseller. You know, I'm a great artist because I have a residency at the Kennedy Center or wherever. That's I'm not the person who sees that as the goal, right? Nor am I the person
How,
that
how, how is that just how you're wired?
it
Or
is.
was there some kind of experience that you had that made that be the case? The reason I ask is because so many of us do aspire, right? I just to take it back to HBCUs for a second. I know so many HBCU alum who can't wait to send their kid to a not non-HBCU. I know so many people who do grassroots stuff, but with the goal of getting past it. You know, I know so many independent artists who would love, at least back in the day when it was still a thing to do, they loved being independent, talk about independent until the check came or until that phone call came from the majors. They couldn't sign that thing fast enough. They got carpal tunnel signing that thing. And it's like, you know, what made you different or what makes them different?
I'll do that in two ways. One, that's just how I'm wired. I do my best not to judge people who are not wired that way because it's not common, but that's how I'm wired. I'm the proudest 56-year-old that you know, right? And I always go back to what was the movie in 1970 something? 10 with
Mm,
what is her? Bo Derek. Remember?
yes. Mhm.
Okay. Remember when it came out and she had the cornrows? I think I talked about this on one of the episodes of Ascendant.
Yeah.
She had the cornrows, she was running through the beach, and the whole marketing campaign was this white woman. For those who don't know, Bo Derek was a supermodel, super famous. She did this movie called 10, the number 10, with more, and I forgot the plot, but the marketing was such that this white woman, well, she wasn't voluptuous, but but she
She
had
was not that.
cornrows flowing down her back. And I remember as a teenager or a preteen listening to that, and the narrative was that she invented cornrows. When I tell you in my heart, I never wanted to fight so much and so bad when I heard that. It was absolutely an insult to every black woman, girl, and child that has ever braided hair, wore it, and I'm using that as the example to say I still feel the fire when
Mm.
in my bones right now from decades ago when this narrative and these interviews, white people just lied on us. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I, from that moment, and having watched Roots, what was that? 1976, 78.
Uh, 79 was 10, I believe.
No, no, no. But I'm going back to Roots. I'm adding
Oh,
on
Roots, yeah, Roots was 78. Yep. I believe
78.
78. Yeah, that sounds right.
I, I just that was the thing. I was it.
77.
You 77. It made me so glad to be black. This is my thinking now as I was 10 at the time, right? This was my
Mm.
thinking. It's a little bit more evolved, but the visceral reaction was that I was so glad to be black because I wasn't white and that did those things to black people, right?
Woo.
I was so glad to not be of that race. As a 10-year-old, I see things a little bit differently, but I'm saying at my core, to answer your question, I'm wired that way. And it started before I was even a teenager. My consciousness was an alignment with us that's hard to explain. The shoot, I forgot the second part of your question. so
We're talking about
so
sort of. I'm thinking about the people who can't, who aren't wired that way, or what compels them to sort of run for the bag from the majors or from the institutions or from the power structure. And the reason I ask, honestly, is because we're at a moment where they taking it away anyway.
But see, that's the part that you know, when I started my company, to come full circle on that, my thing, people were like, well, how are you going to get health insurance? How are you going to secure a future for yourself? What about retirement? What about all of those things? That was based out of fear. And my thing was, to your point, I have no guarantee that if to a job that I'm going to be able to keep it, sustain it, because I'm working for somebody else. I need to be in a place where I own my own time, where my skills, my talents are totally dedicated to what it is that I believe. And so that's the motivation, at least a little bit, on me starting Aquila Work Songs, the PR agency. But we've done the Speakers Bureau, we do management as well. You know, we manage the Barnes, so it's a lot of different things. But my point is, to decide to be for the culture, for your community, to use your talents and skills, and not have to wait for somebody to tell you how to program, how to design, and whether or not you're going to get your check. That was something that was deep rooted and remains deep rooted all of these 3 decades later. For those who don't live like that, or can't do that, or can't be an entrepreneur, there's no judgment, and I get it. Like, I grew up playing with white dolls, right? So
Mm.
I did. I grew up playing with white dolls and white Barbies, and I still came out this way, black, you know, as ever, because we're inundated. Everything in society is white centric, and the movies, to, you know, to go back to our to television, to it's designed for us to cancel out ourselves. So there's something in me that says, no, it doesn't have to be that way. We are brilliant, we are amazing, we have talent and skills, and that's just because it's not in relationship to. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I, I I wish people understood what's and then we can move to this other topic. But I just, so much of the beauty in our community lays outside of places like the Lincoln Center and the Kennedy Center and the Smithsonian. There's great stuff there, but when I think about the institutions that really hold us down, whether it's the athletic organizations that are in the community, the sports teams, etc., whether it's those dance schools that are up and down the block, whether it's those church choirs, or I mean, you know, I think about in Philadelphia things like Freedom Theater, you know, Philadanco, you know, these
Yeah.
organizations, there's so much there. Not to mention African Rites of Passage organizations, not to mention these African centered schools. There's so much beauty, and I wish we could find ways to invest in that, or get the outside to look toward us, kind of, again, like Toni Morrison said, kind of standing at the margin and claiming it as a center, as opposed to trying to operate from within. And I think some people genuinely believe that if they get inside these big organizations, they can direct the funds to us, and, you know, I can take this thing down from the inside. But I think at some point we gotta own our stuff. You know, we gotta control our stuff. And I don't know if we're any closer to that than we were 50 years ago. But I guess that's my question for you. Do you, having done this work, even just through Aquila for a few decades now, when you look at the state of like the kind of Black cultural landscape and Black artistic landscape, do you feel like we're in a closer space of self-determination than we were before?
Not necessarily, Mark. I don't. What I think we have, though, is a lot of talk.
Mm.
Social media has amplified our voices, and we get confused, right? You know, my brother, Mayor Raz Baraka, always talks about how who's running for governor, by the way, state of New Jersey, always talks about the need to read beyond the headlines, right?
Mm.
And so now with social media, which is what, since 2007, maybe 2006, maybe 2005, if you count MySpace, somewhere along those lines, we get caught up in just the surface. That has always been a human thing, but it's just gotten amplified because of social media. So what I think we have is people talking black, right, but
Mm.
not doing it. Sonia Sanchez always talks about, you can't say you love me and you support me and you're not buying my books, as I say that to the bookstore owner, right? So
You
I
ain't
think
lying.
so it's a lot of talk, it's a lot of I'm black and I'm this, but nobody's, very few people, let me use my words carefully, people are not studying. Everybody wants to be, and I know we're going to talk about this about black woman entrepreneurship, but people want to put on the trappings of being their own boss, right? They want to align with that which is cool and sexy, and everybody wants to talk about Black joy, but I don't know where we're talking about healing. I don't know where we're talking about institution building, but we know the slogans, we know how to put it on a t shirt, we have it on our
Right.
social media, but there's a lack of depth, is what I'm trying to say. The lack of depth, I think, is at an all-time high
That
because we
makes
get
so much
away
sense to
with
me.
it. Say it again.
I said that makes sense. What you're saying, I see that reflected in my experience on the ground. Just continue. I feel what you're saying.
It's but we get rewarded for superficial shit. Like this is the time for that. We get rewarded, and we making money off of slogans and quantifying our presence on social media. We're getting rewarded, and you can't challenge people, right, to be critical thinkers. I think it's at an all-time high, the lack of depth. So I become even that much more not impressed, with the
Yeah.
institutions that are beholden to what they say it means to be an American. So and again, I as someone who has received checks, worked with and partnered with these black institutions, is value there. My challenge is when we end all be all, when the goal is to be like we talked about at the Smithsonian, or we don't have any deeper level of understanding what it means to be an African here, right? And so the lack of study, the lack of critical thinking, the unwillingness to support community art and the nonprofits, the always way show, but you're not checking out, the play at the library or going to those kinds of events. That's a level of elitism that I think is going to really really kick us in the ass. And it's time to be innovative, because if there's ever a time when we are clear that this administration and everybody aligned with it doesn't give a damn about us, it's clear now. We have got to
Yeah.
innovate. We've got to think outside the standard way of existing and way of being creative and being an artist.
That's why I opened a black bookstore. Honest to
Oh,
God, it was like I needed there to be space for these things. I wanted to hold space for it. One of so many of the things we do, and my team gets mad at me sometimes because some of the stuff we do doesn't make money. A lot of stuff we do don't make money. But we had this conversation tonight, or this morning, excuse me. But some stuff we got to do because it's what we need to be doing. Um,
yes.
and again, these institutions made us. I don't know who I would be without Hakeem's bookstore on 52nd Street. In Philly, like I literally don't know who I would be if I didn't have access to black art, black books, black traditions, and if we don't support them, I don't know what happens next.
Well, we shrivel up, if we don't. And I think it's your platform as an independent media space is super important, and all the other like it is super important because we need to articulate in very real ways what does support look like. Okay, on a
Mm.
superficial level where it doesn't cost, you can subscribe to this channel. You can subscribe to Black Media. Shout out to Black Media, independent media. But it's also important to show up, to the meeting. Also important to read and to study. But Mark, this is the other thing I think is we have to be really, really honest with ourselves and interrogate our emotions, and we have to be willing to be vulnerable with ourselves in those quiet moments to say, why am I doing this? Right?
Yes.
As a Black woman entrepreneur, I knew that my drive was for the ultimate evolution of our community. And I made decisions that were not so great, financially. Talk about not making money. That's a whole nother conversation, right? You
Well,
don't get
let's go there right now because you know I hear the story about Black women entrepreneurs, and I always get a little anxious about the Black woman entrepreneur narrative or conversation because for a lot of people, it's just more romanticizing capitalism. And it's more about being a boss lady and getting money and leveling up or, with the Sheryl Sandbergs of the world, the white liberal feminism, it's about, having it all and leaning in. And it's really just about, kind of following the path of people who have never meant us well. But I know what you do is so different than that. First of all, when you think about what it means to be a Black woman entrepreneur, just so we got some context, what does that mean to you? Why would you want to be that?
I didn't want to be that.
Mm.
I wanted this to entrepreneur, right? To be honest, my was about service. It was my way contributing to the social justice movement and freedom fighting for our community. That's why I'm only just now a little getting good at the business part, because everything that I did in terms of supporting artists, I lived vicariously through the clients on my. So I had a wide spectrum of Black folks that I support as my way of saying, and I know this might sound a little corny, but it was my way of saying thank you to our honorable ancestors who sacrificed for us. I'm doing my part. I can't sing, can't dance. I could dance a little, but only on Thursdays. I can't do any of that, right? But I'm organized. I can write reliable. I'm a woman of good character. How do I bundle that for the culture? I can
Mm.
stand, and I don't need to be in front of the camera, right? I don't need to do that. I want the people who are skilled at it to benefit from talents. 9 times out of 10, the people, not this is not talking about you, but the in front of the camera, like everybody has their skills and talents. I was very clear where my talents were. So I started out to be a businesswoman. This was purely movement work, absolute
Mm.
work. And I got kicked in the ass a number of times. Let me say this to before I forget. This is a really really story that I tell about when it's all passion and you sit down and do the things that you don't like to do. I'm horrible at math, right? I'm a word. I didn't file taxes for years, right? And starting my business. I know it's a whole bunch of people watching who also had the same story, but they won't tell it, right? But a lot of
Right.
us in the creative space didn't do what we were supposed to do on the business side. So here's the story. I used to be Dougie Fresh's assistant. I was,
Yes.
that 1 year of graduate school that I did. I left Howard. I did my undergrad and graduate work at Howard, and I had become friends with Fresh, and he needed an assistant. So it's a long story, but I left graduate school to move back to New York to work with him for his career and his social justice work. We maintained a friendship. I started our the Speakers Bureau, and I booked him and Jessica Care Moore at Boston University, right? Because again, I had a Speakers Bureau at the time.
Yeah.
Booked him there, and that's a state school, right? So I went. I went just because I was, you know, they my people and I went, but they were the ones speaking. The day that I got the check after the event, I got the check from the university. And I was so happy because it was a decent amount of check. I was going to get my 20%, whatever, whatever. I opened the check and it was a letter from the IRS.
IRS. Woo! I know.
Why are you laughing? Because you know that story?
Oh, I done got that. That's the worst feeling.
That's, oh my God. I opened that envelope ready to show my parents that I had the money, I'm honorable, and get your percentage. I opened the envelope and the letter was basically was like, you don't have no money, Miss Silver.
Right.
And that was the first time I realized, oh, I should open my mail from the IRS. Maybe I should open all of those letters instead of pushing them aside, right?
Yep.
So, Mark, I promise you, I had just enough money to pay Doug and Jessica. I literally think my percentage after I paid them was like $1. Like they didn't take the whole check, they took enough for me to pay them, and my cut, what was left over was like $1.
Ooh.
I say that to say that for us to be honest with ourselves and we say we want to do this work, it can't just be about your passion. It can't be just because you love Black women. It can't just you really, really do hair. You know, it can't just be that. There is a level of sacrifice and discipline and focus that we have to bring to if we're going to stay in this. I'm sorry to say that you couldn't tell me time, and this was in the 90s, I think, had to be in the 90s. You couldn't tell me that I was never going to make it again. I was traumatized. I just knew I was going to get my shit together. That's not true. It didn't happen. So this thing about being passionate and about the business and you get to say you boss, so it's a bunch of bullshit if you're not really ready to do the work. Around yourself people who will push you to do the things that you don't want to do. I love programming and marketing and publicity. I love it. I don't like doing the other stuff. I have an accountant is kicking my ass. you know what I mean? But that's 3 decades in. After so many stories where I fell on my face and then I got saved and then I fell back into the type of just doing what I want to do, which is the programming and the feel good. That's what I'm good at. But the discipline that comes with it so you can be sustainable, it requires sacrifice and discipline and a certain kind of mental stillness to make yourself do the things you don't want to do. And this thing about everybody wanting to be their own boss, it's to be their own boss, and the Black woman, the entrepreneurship, it's so emotional. A lot of it, not all of it, Mark, you and I both know, we do our best not to speak in absolute terms. So much of it is performative. So much of it is for social media. And I'm like, what insecurity are you trying to feed right now by doing all of this? And it's around artistry as well. I'm not impressed because you call yourself a poet. You haven't studied. You haven't trained. And I'm just not impressed. I'm not the Aquila Work Songs is not for everybody because I gotta see the work, not just your emotions and your passion. And I'll just pause there. I could go on.
No, it's such a great observation, and I think about I think about it on multiple levels what you're saying. I don't think this is unique to Black women entrepreneurs, but I think Black women get so little grace in this world that when the stuff ain't right and fall short, there's nobody to save you. There's nobody to help you. There's no institutions, there's no policies, there's no people who are going to pull out that safety net. But I think about, I mean, even for me, I mean, I've gotten them IRS letters. I had to quickly pay because once the IRS comes and start taking it, they don't stop. So you got to figure something out, because otherwise, every check you get, you're gonna get every employee. It's embarrassing. I remember having speeches where the speaker's agency was calling me like, "Hey, we got a note from the IRS saying we can't give you your check." I'm like, this was 1099 income. I was like, I didn't even know y'all knew about this. How y'all hear about this? You know,
Yo,
so I know what that's like. And a lot of it came from like lack of planning, lack of discipline, a lack of attentiveness to this thing. I did the same thing you did. I looked at them IRS letters and put them down. Said, I got more urgent things to worry about. I'm trying to pay this bill. I'm trying to handle this
yes,
business. I'll get to it. But you know, you put it off. And then I look at the artists that I know. I think particularly about these young rappers. And they're not particularly bad at it. They're just the ones who I know the most. And these athletes too. We don't do a good enough job preparing them for the lives they're about to live. And oftentimes the people who are closest to them don't have the experiences to know, hey, here's what you do. Here's what you don't do. Here's how you save. Here's how you budget. Yeah, that money, you need an accountant. You needed this, you needed that. And so a lot of us end up making the same mistakes. I always tell my daughter, like, make some new mistakes, right? Don't make, you're gonna make mistakes, just make some new ones.
yo, you got to get out of my head, Mark. That you know that's real. But I would offer this though. I would say I know I'm always dropping names, but I consider it a blessing to do so. Amina
Mm,
Baraka taught us that sometimes it looks like we're not fighting because the offense is so great.
mm,
I would say if we extend that, sometimes it looks like we're not teaching our children because the extra pressures are so overwhelming.
yes.
So so we are saying it, many of us, right?
Yeah.
But it's not getting through because the pull fashionable to be on trend, all of those things. That's a tsunami, right? That pull, and it's the beast that gets fed, not the part that says you got to be done. You got like how many hours did you spend this week getting your finances in order? Do you have a budget? Can you sacrifice X, Y, and Z so that you can meet payroll? You understand?
Yeah.
But to come back, that's a political statement as well from Amina Baraka. It looks like we're not fighting because the offense is so great. We just got to figure out how to be louder than those oppositional forces, and that's
Yes.
hard. It's really the younger the better, but it's not impossible to teach your old dog tricks. You know what I mean? The
Not at
mind
all.
the mind is the most innovative tool walking around in human flesh. You know what I mean? And we got to tap into it more.
We absolutely got to tap into it. And that's again for me, the work of community. And, people talk about all the time, what high school teaches you and what it doesn't. I really wish we had the kind of financial literacy,
Yes.
installed in our school curricula so that it's not something that's foreign to you. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I was going to check cashing places to cash my checks. I was a grown man still doing it, and I
Yeah.
didn't even I didn't know, and I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know that if I even if I just went to the bank that it was drawn on, they would cash it for me, even if I didn't have an account there. I didn't know that, and
Right.
and, and I was paying people to give me my money, and I didn't
Right.
make enough money to afford paying people to be able to
Right.
afford paying people. If I made 200, I could afford to give somebody 10 of it.
Right. But there's levels to that, right? Went to the check cashing place. I had checks. I was self-contained. So it's levels to it, again, there was still a lack of depth. You could have a bank account,
Hmm.
those things. But to your point, the financial literacy is a major skill we got. I absolutely agree with you 1,000,000%. Absolutely.
It has to happen. It absolutely has to happen. And preparing, particularly for Black women, um, kind of preparing them for that pathway in terms of what kind of training you need, what kind of schooling you need, what kind of financial awareness you need, what type of resources you need. Because there are, for example, grants out there are opportunities out there, but we don't know about them. I mean, so many things. I mean, I remember doing during COVID. I was fortunate enough to have somebody on my team at Uncle Bobby's, Justin, who was able to say, "Hey, look, there's grants out here. There's money out here. We got PPP loans. We did all the things. It
Right.
worked out okay for us." But there are people in the world who have that level of access every day before there's a pandemic. They know they know how to get the grants. They know how to get loan forgiveness. They know how to do this, and this. And I think we just have to do a better job of connecting, folks. But I want to ask you about something else, because there's a life piece of this, and it kind of connects to the last thing that I want to talk to you about.
Mhm.
We're trying to manage all of that while also trying to live. If particularly if you are Generation X, right? You know, those of us who are Generation X, we are in a particularly tough spot because we're caught between raising kids, some of us, caring for aging parents, some of us. And the latest research shows that Generation X, which they kind of call a sandwich generation, because you're stuck in this really interesting and tough place. We're facing severe mental and financial strain. And now, bring it back to Trump just for a second, not to make it all about Trump, but
Never.
cutting Social Security don't help. So the future safety net that we always thought was going to be there, it might be, but it ain't guaranteed. And so if you're and for those who know, Generation X, people born between 1965 and I think 1980, right? So
Mhm.
we're like, you got the baby boomers and you got it's not quite as big of a window, but the idea here is that what makes this moment interesting, and I'm living it, right, is I'm taking care of children and I'm taking care of old people, while trying to navigate this world. And even if you don't have children, you still have a life that is organized around a certain thing that probably didn't anticipate having to take care of people who took care of you. And so we're stressed. We're not sleeping. We're losing our money. We're losing our, I mean, anyway, there's just a lot going on. How do you think about this stuff?
Like you, I live it. The only difference is, my father is still alive. He's in hospice in Florida, right? In hospice care at home.
Mm.
And with dementia and Alzheimer's, right? The fact that he's still alive is amazing. My mother in Georgia is needs support, right? Nowhere near on that level. So emotionally, every nanosecond of the day, that's where my heart is every day, right?
Mm.
And practically with my mother, because I run her home, right? I do all of the things. I literally commute. I call it the long commute between New York and Georgia several times a month, literally for the past year and a half. So the only difference with me is I don't have children of my own, but I take care of more than me and my mother's household, of people who could be my children, right?
Right.
So to your point, I know that's the new phrase, the sandwich generation. That's a real thing. And I saw this data that said, what is it? 71% of middle-aged Americans are in caregiving roles to both simultaneously their parents and their children. That's essentially what we're talking about. But the other part of that is that most of them, close to 80%, are suffering financially trying to do both things. So to your point about Social Security, that I can't believe of what kind, like how worse it could get than it is now if security is tampered with. And to your other, the emotional stress, that's a real thing. The mental health issues, our children, the all-time high. Never before have our children been diagnosed with so many mental health issues, right? There's a data to support that. And dementia and Alzheimer's is on the rise, unlike
Yes.
we've ever seen. And then in the middle, I wonder if we recognize our own mental health issues in trying to deal with both. So, Mark, it's hard. It's definitely hard. I don't know the best ways to cope because that's an individual thing. I do like, though, that we're normalizing conversations around mental health. I do
Yeah.
like that there are outlets, and we're giving ourselves permission to take care of ourselves as best we can, straddling the fence. What I don't like, like I'm always looking for the ugly side, right? I'm always looking for the ugly side. What I have some challenge are who want to wave the self-care flag and the boundaries flag and do all of those things because that's the popular thing, right? That we're talking
Don't
about. People
don't get
setting
me started with that.
boundaries and people checking out because somebody says something the wrong way. I'm not doing that. I just wish that we could get a little bit deeper and see to what extent are we setting our boundaries, emotionally checking out. I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference. And sometimes I wonder, I wish we could make sure that on the checklist is is this a price that I have to pay, or am I really hurt right now? Right? Is this sacrifice for my mother, for my father, for my children? Can I afford this sacrifice? Or do I really need to check out? Am I uncomfortable or am I hurt? Do you
Yeah.
understand? Mm,
Yes. I do. I do. And I think about, and I was talking about this on the Button podcast. There are these moments where I had to make some really tough choices, and I had to be deeply invested in the caregiving for my father.
mhm.
Um, I didn't have the luxury of saying I'm overwhelmed, or I don't have it in me, or I need to establish boundaries, or I need some other people to take some of this weight. I had four siblings who were alive at the time.
Mm,
My sister ended up dying right after my dad.
yes.
So, but at the time, everybody was alive and there, and I'm the baby of the family. So, part of me was like, I don't need to be doing all this. Um, and there was a moment where I did need to do that. I did need to check out and take a step back because it wasn't just uncomfortable; it was actually harming me. I told you a story that I won't share here, but you and I talked about the last time we spoke on the phone. Maybe I think it was earlier this week or Monday. I think it was, whenever it was, where I was sort of talking about a period where I was all these surprises popped up in my life and all these things were
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
At that in the backdrop of everything I told you that day, my father was in a nursing home facility and he was dying. And so I didn't have the luxury of saying like I'll come back. You know what I mean? I'll come
Yeah.
back to this issue.
Yeah.
I had to be there. I had to be present in ways that I don't know if I had the well, I made it work, but I wasn't better for it. It wasn't one of those things that I toughed it out and I'm glad I had to do it. And so knowing that line between, I'm uncomfortable or I can't take this is unhealthy is a tough one. And I think that the lesson that I've learned from this generation or the millennials, and we used to being in the newsroom with millennials, they would irritate the shit out of us because newsrooms are intense places. People
Yes.
talk to you crazy, and they shouldn't, right? But they almost were the other extreme where you couldn't say anything else. They needed a mental health day. Or I remember, someone fresh out of college, they were they were like one step above an intern who'd been on the newsroom for all of 3 hours, went to like the head of the news department. Like, I didn't feel heard in the last meeting. It was like, because you ain't supposed to be talking, right? But there was a way that their expectation of how the world works is very different. They were catered to. They were what's the word? Coddled. Uh, and I think some of them aren't resilient because of it. But the flip of that is they know how to establish boundaries. They know how to protect their mental health. They know how to say this isn't good for me. And I sometimes wish that we had a way of striking out some balance between those two things, because we just take it on the chin, like, oh, yep, here's another thing, here's another
Yeah.
thing. And for Black women in particular, again, because the expectation is that you all can carry everything and don't need the supports and don't need the interventions and the help from other people. It becomes very easy to just be like, damn, they resilient, as opposed to trying to create conditions where you don't have to be, you know?
Yeah. Mark, you've said a lot. You've said a lot and courageously so, right? That's who
Mhm.
you are. Because I really do struggle with that delicate balance, right? I really do struggle with it. There's a part of me that's old school and not healthy, where I'm like, I'm gonna need you to, right? Because that's
Mhm.
how I was raised. But to your point about identifying and being able to be emotionally intelligent and articulate is a good thing. So I don't know the balance between being resilient and persevering and opening up and still taking care of self. That's really it's a delicate thing. And we need it for sure. I had a person time that at Aquila the culture is a nurturing culture, right? Me and clients, me and I had a staff person who was my mentee as well. And it was the first time, young enough to be my daughter, but it was the first time that I really had to be quiet and listen and not judge, real talk,
Mm.
when they talked about the person wasn't full time, so they had other people that they were serving. And all of the things that they weren't going to do when the person talked to them, and as they were explaining the scenario, where they were so offended, I'm quietly listening, like I don't know where the offense is. You,
Right.
but I'm listening, and it was a real moment. I don't even know I don't know what to say to you, because where's the offense? That's what was going on in my head. But it really is like I wanted to say, I don't know if you're gonna make it, but I didn't say that. But
but
I
you, but
really had to figure out, it was a challenge for me, right?
yeah.
Because I just know that we have so many stories, as Black women, as Black men, um, where we've had to just endure a lot. I think of Mark, and you know this better, but I always think about those scholars. Let's put it on academic level for a second. Those
Yeah.
scholars in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, Black scholars
Yeah. Yeah.
at white institutions. It wasn't until I actually saw a picture time ago of a Black student, Black young woman at a white institution. She was from the South, it was up north, and she was taking her lessons in the hallway. Everybody else was in the classroom, right? And she was in the
Mm.
hallway having to listen because she wasn't allowed to be in the class to get
Wow.
and it wasn't until I saw that picture that made me sit still and think about the footsteps that those scholars walked, those footsteps, those places where they weren't welcome, but they
Yeah.
appeared because they knew that West Bubblefuck, wherever, needed a dentist, needed a Black dentist,
Right.
right? So they were going to dentry, why I'm losing my words, to become a dentist in order to take that home to the community, whatever the skill was, whatever the craft was. We've endured so much, and it might sound a little cliche that to look to our ancestors, the honorable ones, not the ones who sold us into slavery, but I'm always
Right.
very clear about being specific. But there is some value in those stories, right? And doing more than what we think we can do, handling more than what we think we can handle. But there's also value in, like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking
Yeah.
that. So it's a hard balance.
And figuring out that balance is tough. And when you add kids and parents to the mix, these are the people who we can't turn away from. These are the people we can't say no to at a certain level. And so it becomes a question of figuring out the how, not the if, but the how.
Yes.
Um, and that sometimes that's easy. Again, I'm blessed to have some support, um, especially financially,
Hmm.
that makes things easier. But I know people who don't have the luxury of even financial support, and so they got to work 3 jobs, or they got to move mama in, even if that's not best
Yeah.
for mama, or it ain't best for you, or daddy or whoever. I remember, you know, actually, I don't want to tell the stories. I'm not sure I can get through it, but I just know we had to make tough choices, and and we were fortunate to have options, that other, to be able to say, hey, you can go into palliative care, or you can go into this nursing home, or you can go into this rehab center. You don't have to be home,
Right.
where it's not, where you may not get the best treatment or the best care, not because we don't love you, but because we ain't doctors, or
Right. Right.
because
Right. Right.
my mama can't lift you up the steps, and or whatever the
No.
thing might be. It's difficult, and I think it's important for people to know that the stories they're experiencing, or the lives they're experiencing, are they can find some resonance in the stories of others, that y'all not alone, that all this stuff we're going through, that we don't have to do this alone.
Right. But would you agree, Mark? Do you have this experience where the older you get, we're both in that so-called sandwich generation? Have you had the experience? I know I have, that it made me less judgmental.
Oh yeah.
Meaning, you just don't know what people are going through. You, at any given moment, you don't know the person sitting next to you. You don't know what they're going through. And uh, my partner, one of my best friends, Almighty, he's always like, it's not fair for people to complain. Anybody,
Yeah.
because everybody has a version of something, and maybe that's a state, but the emotional toll that we carry and that we hide,
Yes.
as we mature, and we this data that we have just tells us what we already know, right? And what we're doing.
Yeah.
My point is, it has made me less judgmental. It has made me more careful in my relationships with people, because I can assume that you probably, if you're my age or anywhere thereabout, I can safely assume that your parents might be the folks, 70s or 80s, might just be with dementia or Alzheimer's, right?
Yeah.
You might just be trying to figure out, how the hell did my father fall from grace?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that, and to see it, that, man, it's a lot. So I want for us as a community to be careful, to be gentle, to interrogate ourselves, and to just be a lot more patient with each other. That's one thing that I've been very conscious about.
I've learned that on multiple levels. I watch people uh parent, and sometimes I'm like, I wouldn't do that. But I gotta tell you something. As a someone whose kids have a 21 and a half year gap between them,
Hmm.
I ain't the same person. I'm not the same parent that I was, the first time around. And in some ways I'm better, but in the way I'm talking now, I'm worse.
What do you
So
mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you
what,
mean?
what I mean, for example, if I were to look up the technical, and I've done this before, my wife has done it, looked up exactly how much screen time a kid is supposed to have at a certain age per week. 22 years ago, I was on it. If it said 2 hours a week, they were getting 1 hour and 58 minutes, whatever it was. Now, sometimes when I'm trying to juggle these three things and take care of my mama and do this and do this, that YouTube be helping.
Real talk.
And there was a time where I'd be like, look at what they doing to that kid. Just showing it, just got him watching cartoons when they should be reading books and blah 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 blah. blah. And look, that sentiment isn't wrong.
Right.
But I also know now that person might be going through 50 other things that makes life very, very difficult to manage. And this might be the only thing keeping you sane, is that child is sitting there looking at that screen time, while you take a minute to just go to the bathroom, or to just take a phone call, Or if it's a toddler, maybe to have the audacity to just feed them, right? Because the toddler will whoop your ass for trying to feed them. So, I'm less judgmental. I'm less judgmental about the choices people make. I hear people used to always talk about, oh my God, um, people put their parents in a home, or we'd be like, oh, white people put their parents in a home and black people, like, look, I, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know why people make these choices. And what I've learned to do is not assume the worst in people and to give people the grace that I would want for myself. I remember, this is the last thing I'll say. I remember walking out of Uncle Bobby's, my bookstore in Philadelphia, and his brother stopped me on the street. And I was getting in my car and he was just like, hey, it's good to meet you, brother. This is my friend over here. He wanted to meet you too. We love the work you're doing, da da da. And I shook both their hands. I said, brother, I apologize, but I got to run. I was going to see my father. And my father had a period where he was getting these infections. And at one point they told us he had a few days and then a few weeks. It ended up being a few years that he lived beyond that. But it was day to day at that time. And we just didn't know. So anyway, maybe 6 months or a year later, I bumped into the brother again. And he said, yo, it was good to see you. He said, but you really left a bad impression on my friend. He said, you just didn't seem like you had time for us. And I said, well, I was rushing to the nursing home to see my father, which I told him at the time. I said they told us he was dying. And I just couldn't stop and talk because I literally didn't know if it was the last time I was going to see him. And I remember he said to me, he said, okay, I still feel like you could have stayed a little longer.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And so there was a few things in it. I mean, so one was before that interaction, he assumed the worst. At least one of them assumed the worst of me without having any idea what I was running to. And I wasn't rude, but and there's a way that when you're in the public eye, people just objectify you and think that you're not a person, right? So even after they find out what you got to do, they still be like, yeah, but this is the only time I'm going to meet you. So I need you to prioritize that. Some people aren't going to. So there's two things. One was, people don't know. It was a reminder to me that in the same way that I'm irritated with somebody or I'm beeping the horn, like, if you don't, why are you sitting at that red light, or why are you driving so slow, or why are you driving so fast? And it's like, you might be rushing to the hospital to get to see your mama for the last time, right? I just don't know. So I try to assume the best in people. But as I learned by the end of that story, some people don't wish you the best, or they can't see past their own shit. And I can't be prisoner to their feelings, because there's a part of me that wishes I had stayed a few minutes longer with that guy so he wouldn't think that about me. Not at the expense of my father in that case, right? Because that one I can see past. But it could be something else, right? It could have been I'm rushing to something that was important, but I'm going to sacrifice what I need to make sure that person is okay. And we spend so much time, especially if you're a people person and you're a people pleaser, we spend so much time trying to heal everybody and make sure everybody's happy and everybody feels good. And it sometimes comes at the expense of our own needs and our own well-being. And even after you do all that, they still kind of be like, yeah, but he didn't smile enough, or yeah, he could have stayed.
So then what's the point?
Right. So
Mark, I don't know what it is. The fact that you told that story, and we know how much your father means, present tense to you, and you still found the words to say, I wish maybe I could have stayed a little bit, said a little extra word or two so that they wouldn't think that. Like, I don't know what that is. I know that, but I don't know it. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I recognize it in me, but I just don't know why. You know what I mean? I will say, as an extension of what you're saying, or compliment, 2017, 2018, I want to apologize to everybody. Like, whoever knew in 2017, 2018, I want to apologize to everybody. I will forever be apologizing to
I know
whoever
that.
has, because that's when my father's dementia went from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
And it was slow. It was like it started off slow, slow, slow. And we're like, what's going on with daddy? And then I'm a dad girl, right? I'm a dad girl, and I look just like my father. And my story during that time when I was losing it, because this man who was the leader of the family, with flaws for sure, right? How could he not? He's human.
Right.
But still, like, just a bigger than life, larger than life. We saw the mental decline. His wife, Miss Pat, who I adore, needed a break, right? She went away on a trip. I'm getting a little bit fuzzy on things, but she went away on a trip, and I went to Florida with him in the house. He get in hospice, right?
Mm.
So I don't know if I told you this. I think I might have shared this story with you. Um, so she went away a week, but before I got there, I was like, so the nurse is coming, right? While you're away and I'm there, so you can be relieved because you deserve it. Tell me the schedule of the. It was like there won't be a nurse. We have that figured out yet. I'm like, well, who's gonna bathe him, right? Because
Right.
like I'm his daughter, right? Like who's going to bathe him for a week while you're away? You'll get over it because you have to do it. That was what we laugh about it now, but at the time, I was like, oh hell no. I Oh my God, Mark, I can't begin to. The short version is I went. I was there for the whole week. I bathed my father every single day in all of his nakedness. I bathed my father. And at the moment, the first day I did it, I was like, okay, you're not his daughter. That helped. That's the thing that I kept saying to myself over and over as I
Yeah.
bathed him from head to toe day by myself for a week.
Oof.
My point is that evolved, like by the end of the 7 days. I wish that was the only challenge that I had to deal with. His dementia had exploded, and he was sundown at the time, right? I didn't
Mm.
know, but he was sundowning, and everything always happened at night. One time he tried to burn down the house, and then the biggest thing was that I recognized who I was. My hair, like in 2016, 2017, but I was an intruder. His
Mm.
house. Talking about, what did
Yeah.
you do with my wife? Looking at me and getting mad. And then he starts to search for a gun. And I was like, Miss Pat didn't tell me there's a gun in the house. How come you didn't tell me there's a gun in the house?
Things I'd like to know, especially with somebody dealing with. Yeah.
Dealing with dementia. So we got into a physical fight. We got into a physical fight, and I promise you, in that moment, I wasn't his daughter. I wasn't his nurse. It was survival of the fittest, and I meant to knock his ass out because he was looking to shoot/kill me. I
That's
say that to say,
crazy.
talking about dealing with aging parents, everybody who knew me then, 2016, 2017, I'm sorry. I
Look,
don't even
after this
know.
story, you don't owe them nothing.
But I'm just saying, like, when we're talking about the emotional toil, right? This
Yeah.
man who's larger than life, who at night, every night, is either trying to burn down the house or look for a gun to shoot me because he doesn't recognize I'm his daughter. But in the
Yeah.
morning, it's fine. Oh my
Right.
God. Who can deal with that? I tell that story a lot because it's so, it's just so real. And it's the thing that makes me consider, that people are just a lot. Whether
Yeah.
Generation X or not, you know what I
Right.
mean? But there's a little bit of an extra weight, so deferential to this, because I'm like, if I had a child from my womb, I was also trying for at that time, I just don't know how I would have done it.
Right.
So
And we make a way, right? That's what we do. We especially as Black folk, we just make a way. But
Yeah.
you can't always do everything well. And, I
That
think juggling that time period, I know that there were moments where I was the worst business partner ever. I think we were still doing business together. There's times where I just wasn't around. There's times where I was the worst parent of a teenager.
yeah.
There was times where I
Right.
was the worst teacher,
Right.
the worst book writer. Shit, I'm still ain't finished that book. You know, um, and part of the reason why it's hard to finish that book is because I was writing it during that time, and it's
Yeah.
literally hard to go back to that space. And so some of it is we're juggling these things, but we can't do all these things well. And and I'm learning to sort of give myself some grace for that, and to figure that out. Because it's just not it's like when I, as a professor, I know when students are pledging because I can see it in their face, right? They don't tell me, but I don't want to know nothing. But they start missing class, they stop getting haircuts, they start, all the things happen, and then one day they just show up in class again with a line jacket on. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
And then I'm able to put the pieces together and say, oh, this is why they weren't showing. Oh, they weren't disrespecting me. They didn't have capacity to do all these things. They made
Right.
choices. You
Right.
know, but most of the time in life, we don't have the luxury of seeing the student pop up with the line jacket, or circling back to the person, say, oh, I was going to visit my dad, or whatever the thing might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have to find a way to make room for that grace and that mercy, even when we don't get the dots connected for us and the loose ends tied.
Yeah.
Because some people are just terrible people. Some people are just jerks, whatever. Some people are just selfish.
Right.
But a lot of times shit is really going on, and we gotta figure that out. And on our end, I think we have to be able to say, hey, I'm not going to do all these things well. Sometimes I'm just
Yeah.
trying to keep everything in the air. I'm literally just trying to keep, as the old folks say, keep on keeping on. And
Yeah.
it's all I can do. And that's okay. It's okay that you didn't do this, that you weren't the best this year at this thing.
Hmm. But that flies in the face of this need to achieve, right?
Yes.
This need to achieve this grind culture that we have. I got to shout out Byron Hurt, right?
Yes.
Because when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 2021, he's the first person I called, right? Because
Mm,
if you know his story, and he's been public about it, he was diagnosed later in life, like way late, as a grown ass man with type 1
yeah.
diabetes, like he's told that story. So when I was diagnosed with type 2, I called him first. And I was like, Byron, I'm not taking no medicine. My vanity would not allow me to take any medicine, right? I was like, I'm just going to change my life. I'm going to start walking. I'm going to start eating. I'm going to start sleeping. And then he got in my ass about the sleep thing. Because I used to brag, ooh, this is going to resonate with you. Not that you brag about, pulling all-nighters, but I do pull all-nighters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was a badge of honor for me to pull an all-nighter, even
Right.
at 30, 40, 50 years old, because that meant that you couldn't outwork me, right? It was this
Yeah.
unspoken
That's it right
badge
there.
of
You said it.
honor.
Yeah.
Like my character was built around my work ethic. You know what I mean? I'm a good woman because I work hard. I don't, you know what I mean? So I told Byron about the situation. We had a long talk. He was telling me all of the things to be mindful of, and he got on me about sleep. He was like, I need you to be embarrassed, April R. Silver. I need you to be embarrassed the next time you talk about you pulled the all-nighter. That's all I remember. That's all I
Look,
remember.
you just preached the word to me. That's so important. I never thought. I mean, I try
It's not
not to
a
do them.
flex. It's
It
not a
shouldn't be a
flex.
flex. It should be embarrassed. It should be embarrassing. That's a great way to put it. You should be embarrassed in it. Yo, I'm gonna keep that, and shout out to you, Byron, for saying that, because that is, um, wow. That's very helpful.
But that
The-
means we have to be willing to say no to something, right?
yeah,
We can't raise children, take care of our parents, be responsible for, I'm picking on you, in 2 books at least that we know about, at the same time, running a
facts.
book, doing all of the things. I can put all my shit on the table right here too, and I'm just as guilty. I'm better. I'm better. I'm better. When I learned, I'm embarrassed to say, when I learned how much your body needs 7 to 8 hours at an older age, because it
Yeah.
can't heal. There are organs in your body and muscle tissue, or I mean muscle and tissue, or whatever. It can't know this as an athlete. It can't heal if you're not giving it what it needs, 7 to 8
Right.
hours. And then when you're sick, you need 9 to 10 hours of sleep,
Yeah.
not
And I
rest.
don't do that. I don't do that no days. I mean, it's almost 12:30 a.m. here in the East Coast, and if I'm lucky, I'll get 6.5. I mean, if I'm lucky, and that's if I went to bed in the next 10 minutes, which probably
Right,
won't happen.
right.
And I'm eating way too late. I'm doing, I'm
But why
exercising.
are
I'm
we
doing,
so hard-headed, Mark? I'm saying we with a capital We. Why
yeah.
do we say these things and we know better, but we don't do better? Like that's an honest friend to friend.
I
What is
think I
that?
think it's the thing you said earlier, though. I think it's the drive to achieve and to excel,
Mm.
and there's some ego in that too, because there's a way that we think we have this unique calling and this unique gift that no one else can do but us. So, I mean, if I'm asleep, who else gonna fix the world? If I'm asleep, who else gonna run this event? If I'm asleep, who else gonna write this book? If I'm asleep, who else gonna host night school?
Somebody's got to do it.
If somebody's
That's
got to
ego.
do it,
That's
and
ego.
I'm
You're right.
somebody, you know. And I'm trying to. I mean, they get on me. Jazz LP, Dallas Finest, and say, "Yes, Mark, why are you hard headed when it comes to sleep?" I'll be on night. I mean, you watch night school stuff. I'll be here like
Uh,
half asleep, my eyes closed.
Yo, we've seen it. Mark, we've
Yeah,
been in the chat like Negro. Go to bed.
right. I know, and I gotta do. But in fact, I'm gonna take that advice right now. But before we go, everybody, these kinds of conversations, they don't happen from me. Y'all watch me do this every night, and we don't talk like this. This is April Silver's magic, and she don't even know how magical she is. The show is called Ascending. It's right here on the Mark Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. Y'all need to watch April first of all, watch the old episodes
Yes.
they've been up. We've been doing this for a couple months now, but the best is yet to come. Every Saturday live, 99% of the time live, Saturdays at 11
No,
a.m. Eastern.
100%. 100%.
100%. I'm just saying that in case something happened. If a guest, I've told you once or twice, you might have to pre-record that and post it. So I don't want people saying
Yes.
you promised to be live. I always want to just leave a little room, but 99% of the time, so far everyone's been live, and we expect that to continue. We'll let you know if something changed. You can do it live, and the reason that's important is because not only do you get to hear the important conversations that April's having, like the ones we're having tonight, but you also get to engage live. You get to leave comments. You get to ask questions. You get to engage the wonderful guests. I mean, she don't just quote Sonia Sanchez. Sonia Sanchez came on the show. People like Sonia Sanchez, Malik Yoba, Raz Baraka, maybe the next governor of New Jersey, fingers crossed he will be. These are luminaries, and April has access to them, not because she's lucky or because she pounds the pavement, making cold calls, but because she's built relationships, and she has a sterling reputation that's been built over the last 32 plus years of not just running a Killer Work Songs, but being a voice and a figure in this community. She's extraordinary in every way. And as you know, I don't put nobody on this channel, but April was a no-brainer. It was like, if we could have April on this channel, if we could have Ascending on this channel, if we could have space for those types of conversations and these types of people, we got to do it. And that's why she's here. So just thank you for hanging out with us on the channel on Saturdays, but also just for being who you are.
Mark, I thank you. I thank you. I remember when you first approached me about it, and you was like, I would prefer you to do weekly, but whatever you do, just make it. They don't have to be weekly. I was like, I can't do weekly.
Right.
I can't do weekly.
That's what I used to say about nightly. That's what I used to say about myself about nightly. I can't do nightly. I can't do everything.
Yeah, I look at you like you got three heads, because I'm like, yo, you do this every night, right? Because I was like, Mark, let me do 4 shows and see if I can handle it, right? I came back to you after the 4th show. I was like, yo, I'm having fun. and you were like, I knew you were going to do weekly.
Yep.
But
I had no doubt about it.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm definitely having a ball, but I really, really appreciate the opportunity. This is the other thing I'm gonna tease you about. when you mentioned it, you was like, yeah, because you know these amazing people, all of the things you just said, this relationship, and you can stop bugging me about getting your guests on my show. I was like, Mark, I'm bugging you. And you were like, no, 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 I didn't mean like. I was like, yes, you did. You meant you meant I'm bugging you with my PR hat when I'm always like, can you get so and so on? I was like, you meant to
And they're
say.
always great guests. They're
No, I
always
know.
great guests. You bring amazing people, but it was like, you know what? This is even better.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. But
Yeah,
I
man,
thank you
funny
for
though.
believing in me, honestly, because I am having a ball. It's amazing conversations. And in addition to, if I may say, the names that people in the movement know, like Baraka and Sanchez. We had Dr. Kamika Royal on as well. That conversation about adoption, I'm telling y'all now with Sandy Caesar, I'm telling you now,
That was a good one.
that's and Sandy doesn't have the big name, like whatever. I didn't know the thing called adoption abolition. Like who knew? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to you publicly, thank you so much for being a supporter, being my friend, my brother. Like it's been
Always.
an amazing opportunity to bring this out. The people who I know from the woodworks or from the main stage, like it's been phenomenal.
Oh, well, it's the best is yet to come. We're going to continue
Yes.
to do amazing work. Everybody, Saturday, April 5th is another amazing episode, but every week is something dope. It's fun, it's exciting, and it's perfectly aligned with what this channel is about, but it's also different. It's a different tack. It's a different approach to the work we do here on this channel. So that's why I love it. Like I said, even the conversation I'm having with you tonight is a conversation we've never had on Night School, even though it's one that we should be having in Night School, because again,
Right.
different people bring different things out. And that's why we need different channels and different voices. And again, thank you for amplifying other voices, but I'm so glad that yours is being amplified now. And I'll see you on Saturday. And one of these days I'm gonna get an invite to be a guest.
You got to come on in June. You should
That's
be
right.
here.
Is June what we said? June is that what it is?
June 14th, the day before my birthday.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, look, I'll be there. You ain't got to tell me twice. I'll be there. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to checking you out this Saturday. Thank you, April.
Thank you, Mark. Love you, fam.
Love you too. Everybody, that is Night School tonight. Thank you for watching so much. We did an hour and a half. I thought this was going to be one of the shorter episodes, but you get two Negroes talking who love each other, man. This is what happens. It's beauty, it's love. And thank you all for joining in the conversation. The comment section was lit tonight. And I just appreciate y'all for all the support. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button, and if you're so inclined, hit the join button to become a monthly subscriber, a monthly paid subscriber to the channel. That membership gives us the financial stability we need to do the work that we do every single night here, every single day here on the channel. And look, if you can't make a monthly commitment, that's all love. All we ask is that you maybe make a one-time commitment. Consider it just tuition for Night School for the night or for the month. You can go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and just drop something in. You can drop $1, that's cool. If you drop $1 million, a little bit cooler. But we're grateful either way. Anything in the middle is good too. No amount is too big. No amount is too small. But we are asking everybody who's watching tonight to drop $5, if possible, in the Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle as a one-time tuition. Think about that. Just $5 for the month. What that does is if everybody watching drops $5 in, it gives us the financial stability we need to pay our bills for the month, to be able to pay for staff, to be able to pay for studio space, to be able to pay for editing services, to be able to pay all the bills. $5 would do it. So please consider that. And again, you can give more, you can give less, but we love you either way. If you give nothing, that's okay too. Just hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you share the content. Make sure you watch the content, but most importantly, make sure you study the content, because that is what Night School is all about. I'll see y'all later. Peace.